Welcome to Krazy Knights and another week episode, and I'm really thrilled with this episode. We're up to episode 20, and the big 2-0, and I've got to say, David, it's been an absolute journey. But yeah, before we go on, I want to introduce my other co-host, David Fowler. How you going, David?
How you going, buddy? How's your week been?
Yeah, and I have to say this episode um, that we have got a special guest on this episode.
Uh,
Um, I'm not going to give it out just yet because David has a special announcement to make about this episode that was recorded early hours this morning, Australian time, and we're doing this
uh,
video now for the interview. But yeah, David, you got a special announcement.
not there's so much announcement. We this one interviewed Jamie's flying solo. We were originally going to do it together because of at the time we sort of didn't know what was sort of going on, if we were going to be able to get this guest with us. And with me, I had to sort of time constraints with work. I had to sort of pass on the interview for this week. So I'm looking forward to hearing it, like everyone else is out there. So yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what. Shall I say who the guest is,
Well,
Jamie?
before you do, I want to say we have a report that Gene fired David Fowler for this interview. No, no, no. Don't believe that. How it was
Okay.
that David had to play the Gene Simmons role early this morning. He had to make some money and had to make a living. And I've
Yes.
already done my living.
Making some cash.
I'm on a bit of a break at the moment and whatnot, so I can get ready for next year for the wedding. I've got to go back
Yeah.
to work very shortly, but everything's a bit quiet here in Adelaide due to concerts and whatnot. As people know, I do security work and events work for major events. But yeah, David and I was on the phone early this morning, and there was no answer. I left a couple of voicemail messages, and David said, "I need to go back to sleep because I've got to get to work in about an hour and a half time." I said, "David, whatever, just go to bed. I'll sort it out if we rearrange it." I said, "I might give the guest one more call." And lo and behold, it was a minute after David got off the phone, I got the interview. And he did say, "You want to make it another time?" And I said, "Oh, David just got off a minute ago. I'll get my partner, who is the producer of this show, to get hold of David." So we waited for David to respond. And we waited for about 10 minutes while speaking to the guest that's on this show. And unfortunately, David obviously knocked himself out on the pillows. He went back to sleep. And
Hey.
unknown to me, during the interview process, David woke up and talking to my partner via text messaging saying how long they've been on for, how long they've been on. I think Jamie needs to wrap it up now, blah, blah, blah. Well, let me tell you, folks, this is not scripted. It's not timed. Well, I let this
Yeah,
host.
apparently it's the long one.
Well, let me tell you something. I let the host talk, and I love his honesty. I love the stories and whatnot. But before we go on to the guest, Dave, I think we better say our apologies why we haven't been on for about 2 weeks. I've been to Melbourne to see David, and I got home and I had the flu. My partner had the flu. I went to footy training with the flu last week for pre-season. It just started, and yeah, it was just basically knocked me off my feet basically, and my partner got it the day after I'd received it, and we're better. We're fine now. Shay's still got a bit of a cough and whatnot. I've got an absent tooth that needs to be drilled out of very shortly by the dentist and whatnot. But that's our apology. Also, we were lining up this interview, and it was just that miscommunication, and it didn't come at the time, and it didn't get a response back till Monday this week, and
But we were glad, and we were totally honoured that you know, he spoke to us or spoke to Jamie this morning. And hopefully we'll be able to get him on again later. We're totally stoked, and even though I unfortunately had to, you know, not be on, participate in this interview, I'm glad that Jamie was able to get this one for us and all that. So,
Yeah,
do you
I
want
just
you
want
want me to say who you want me to say who it is now?
just
The
one
reveal.
before you go. I know
Okay.
you're eager. I know you're eager. You're
Uh-huh.
itchy feet. I
Yes.
know you're eager. But I just want to let the fans know, David and I had a bit of a brief meeting 2 weeks ago while I was in Melbourne with David, and we come out with a new segment, and it's called Mug of the Week. Now, due to our slang, a mug, it stands for a comedian, foolish comment, hilarious, whatever. So we're asking the fans to get involved in this, and we are creating a mug
Mm.
with our logo on
Ba-
it.
Basically, we want you to make us laugh.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
and
and all
I
that.
want to
So
let you know how it is. We want
yeah,
Kiss news. We want breaking news. Like David and I will look at the Kiss news. We'll post it up on
yeah.
our page if it's Kiss related. What we see first. That's part of the mug of the week. Also, fans, if you've got anything funny to say or a comment or whatever, it's all going into part and parcel for mug of the week. And
Mhm.
David and I will go through a few of them, like they do on a show that we both love. David and I call before the bounce. They do like a tool of the week. There's something funny happened that week. They'll just do a segment and talk about that. Well, we're going to do a bit of a spin. We're going to do it, instead of being on AFL or Aussie Rules Football, we're going to do it on Kiss. So it's a bit of a laugh. It's not a bash at anybody. We're very light-hearted. We're very humorous as well. I joke around. I've said a lot of stuff and whatnot.
Mhm.
But people,
Yeah.
please say, I'll say this, people. When I say something, right, you don't have to agree with what I say. But at the same token, it does not make me a Kiss fan if I don't like something I say or see or like. If I don't like it, I
Mm.
don't like it. I don't have to like everything Kiss do, say, sing, put out in merchandise. I don't have to be all end all. I love Kiss as what they are, not for what they've done or what they've brought out. So if I say something on the page, please take respect that it's not what I say is the law. It's just my honest opinion. That's all this is all about. But go back to Mug of the Week. I just want to, before you get itchy feet again, David, I know you're eager to announce this
Mm.
guest. I want to give out one Mug of the Week comment that is so hilarious. I think I've read it to you before, and I'm going to
Yeah.
do it again. This is from Eric and Lena Hayes, who is a fan of our page, and this is a funny comment. I made it on TV on VH1 Kiss Fan Club for 4 seconds to say goodbye. They said all the time they could afford having me on for because it would cut into Ace and Peter's share of the money. Uh,
Yeah. Nah. Yeah. I'll
that's
give it
what we
give it
want.
to
We
that one.
want some
Yeah.
people to be humorous. There was another one. I'll just read out one more, David. I'll be really quick.
Yeah.
One more.
Cool.
It's from the same person. It's from the same person. And this person, he just went with it. He really wants his mug, David, since we announced it.
Yeah. Well, it looks like he's getting one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of look of it.
Well, the other one, and
Mhm.
the other one from the same person,
Yeah.
and Gene tongue is so long. He wants French kiss Brooklyn, Queens, and New Jersey at the same time. Not the cities. The girls were named Brooklyn, Queens, and New Jersey. That's what we want.
Yeah.
That's what we want. So, guys, that's what you got to do. Just give us a bit of a segment of or a comment on our Facebook page. Even comment something hilarious on our YouTube page or whatever. Even private message Dave and myself, and we'll look at them and we'll put them all in a basket and we'll pick a couple, and only one of them will be a random winner. We're going to do one each week, but Eric, yeah, you get one. You get one. You want it? Okay, you get one. So we'll go into the.
I think we should make it one a month.
One a month. All right, we'll do one a
Yeah,
month.
we'll do it of the month.
Yeah, but we'll still have the segment of Mug of the Week, and then we'll put all them comments for a month in, and then we'll pick them out. So how's that, Dave? We'll do Mug of the Week every week.
No, it's sense. But yeah, the mug of the month, the best one of the month will get the mug.
Yep. But we do have
Eric's front running at the moment.
We will have a Mug of the Week segment. That's our new segment. But the prize will be Mug of the Month. All sponsored by. We won't say it.
No.
By Krazy Knights. There we go.
Yeah.
Anyway, David, you've been eating.
There you go. Yes, I've been eating.
Go for it. Just go for it.
All right. This week's guest, how we say, put it this way: if this guy wasn't around, we would not have had Kiss. Point blank. This guy is a childhood friend of both Paul and Gene. He was in Wicked Lester with Gene and Paul. He wrote the basic chord structures and that for songs like She and Gone Blind. His name, Love All I Can You Too. This guy's name is Steve Coronel.
Yes, and as Dave mentioned at the start, David had to make money like Gene did. He had to put some bread on the table and pay the bills and whatnot. Pay our freaking bills as well. Put his 50% in this project, but no. Guys,
I'll say again. Thanks, Steve, for agreeing to do this interview. You know, thanks, buddy.
Yeah, and I want to say, guys, you are going to listen to an hour and 14 minutes of Steve Cornell and myself talking about everything from the start at school right up into the Hall of Fame, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, that is, his opinions on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, also what he's going to do. There is a bit of a tease in this that he's thinking about coming down under for a gig or two, and that it's in the works. Now, what do we talk about? Well, we talked about his first meeting Gene at the age of 13 at school. Then we go on to how Gene he stuck his tongue out at the age of 13. There's a story about that there's no artificial attachment, there's no cow tongue or whatnot.
Let's not reveal too much about it.
But that's one of them. What else we spoke about? Well, we spoke about a lot of things. We spoke about the initial meeting at the Steve Cornell's house when he introduced Paul to Gene and vice versa, how Gene was very arrogant and rude to Paul. They never saw eye to eye for a couple of days. But also a good story about a song called Stanley the Parrot. Now, most people think it's about Stanley Ison. That was Paul Stanley's first name. You'll be surprised the story of Stanley the Parrot, of how that song came about. And yes, it did come into Wicked Lester recording session, but they never recorded as Wicked Lester. It was done way. Also, some photos that I have seen recently over the last 2 to 3 months, we had touched on some of them. We also talked about if there's going to be a Wicked Lester reunion, and he does talk very well in depth on that you'll be surprised what was the outcome of that, and it would shock you what people think. You will not know the truth behind this. It may give you a different opinion of what he came out and say, and I am grateful that I got the truth, and I've got the Steve to go in depth on that, and he does get a little bit animated as well. He does get a bit annoyed with what's been said, what by that rumor of the Wicked Leicester reunion, and he's all for it. At least he's honest. That's what I give him credit for. He's honest. He thanked us, David. I won't blow the trumpet, but I'm going to say this on behalf of Steve Cornell. I'm a great interviewer.
Yeah.
So,
oh yeah.
But this is not for me. I did say this in the interview, David. You're a major part of this.
Thanks.
He's gonna
Even though I wasn't there.
Even though you weren't there, I made a point that you are part of this. We haven't sacked you, or Gene hasn't sacked you from this podcast. But I want to say this: Steve Cornell does want to come back on our show. He does want you to be there.
I'll definitely be there next time.
And just let him know. He's gonna do some other stuff. And people, please, as we talk about this, you are going to listen to an hour and 14 minutes audio version of myself and Steve Cornell talking about how it all began and what he's doing now. So, without further ado, let's roll the tape. And guys, enjoy it because you're going to get a history lesson as much as I did. So, we'll come back and wrap it up after the end of this great interview with Steve Cornell from Wicked Leicester. Welcome to Krazy Knights, the Australian Kiss podcast, and unfortunately David cannot join us. He's got work commitments. I've finished my work commitments, and this is my hobby to talk about Kiss, and I just have to say this is a great pleasure and a real honour. I think this is like talking to a Kiss member, and we're going right back to where it all began, way before Kiss name got mentioned and the boys got Ace and Peter. We're going back to the childhood memories of Kiss, and we're talking to no other than Mr. Steve Cornell, all the way from the other side of the Pacific and the Atlantic. Is Mr. Steve Cornell. How are you going, Steve?
Jamie, it's a pleasure to be on here with you. I'm really glad to be talking with you.
And it's a pleasure, as always, you joining us as well, Steve. And unfortunately, as we have to say our apologies to David Fowler, who's the co-host. He'll be joining us later on to do all these video animations that we do for our podcast. But David gave his blessing, Steve, and he wants to tip his hat off to you as much as he'd love to be here. And unfortunately, work is you've got to make money, and that's what he does. So it's put his thing. But anyway, David, when you get back, we'll just talk about this interview, and you're part of this, Dave, so you're not left out. But Steve, I just have to say, this is like a childhood dream. I've said this to other guests on our show that's been on. I was a 10-year-old kid back in the early days of my childhood, and I remember sitting on the bedroom floor with a cassette tape, taping my voice and playing music of my favourite bands, and one of them just happened to be Kiss. And I always had a dream of mine, why don't we talk about the favourite band that I know is Kiss? And lo and behold, I'm 34 years of age and not blowing my trumpet, and here I've got Steve Cornell, the guy that introduced Gene, or Eugene at this time, to Stanley Ison, who is Paul Stanley, who also went to school with Gene, the childhood buddies, and they've been in other bands before Wicked Leicester. But Steve, let's go into that chronology. How was Eugene, or Gene as we know, to you as a personal friend, and also, not only that, a bandmate in other bands like Bullfrog Beer and so forth, so forth?
Well, Gene and I first met each other, Jamie, on the very first day of 7th grade. Now, I know in Australia the schools are set up differently, but we have elementary school, which is 1st through 6th years. Then we have 7th through 10 years, and then we have 10 through 12 years, and that's considered senior high school. So I met Gene in junior high school, the first day of 7th grade. We were both, Gene's a year and a half older, so I was 13, he was 14 and a half.
Yeah.
And, in school, when you come in the first day, they send you all down to the auditorium or to the gymnasium. They want you to get weighed and measured and, you know, your height recorded and all that kind of stuff. So all the girls and the guys are there. So somehow I found Gene in the crowd. We were walking around by ourselves, I guess, and we kind of bumped into each other. We looked at each other and, you know, we said hello. So
did Gene, according to Gene's book, he was quite regularly picked on because we all know he comes from Israel and he had that foreign accent, but at school, was he frequently picked on due to his accent and also due to his belief in the country that he came from?
Well, let me tell you the story first that I started because I think you'll find this entertaining. Then I'll answer your question. How's that?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So we're in the school gymnasium with all the kids, and we start talking, and it turns out that he says he's a singer, and I said, I'm a guitar player. So we separated a little bit after that, and at the end of the session, when most of the people had left, I hear somebody harmonizing in the back of the auditorium, a group of guys. So I look over there, and there's Gene with 3 other guys, and they're doing harmonies, a cappella harmonies, on the song that was popular at the time called Barbara Ann. You know, the one that goes, ba, 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 Barbara Ann. Yeah. So they were a little bit off key. Yeah, they really weren't, you know, doing it great. They were kind of, you know, they're kind of off key. It didn't sound very good, really. So he came back over to me, and he's really happy. He's really excited, you know, and he says, hey, what did you think of that? How did it sound? And I told him, I said, you know, we're in 7th grade. I'm a little kid, you know. I spoke my mind. I said, I think it sounded like shit. So he looks at me, and I'll never forget, his eyes go wide, you know. He says, what? And all of a sudden, I think he didn't even realize what he was doing. He reached out and he jabbed me in the mouth with his fist. Not real hard, but just like a real quick jab, like. And I looked at him. I said, what the? And then he like recoiled. He says, oh, I'm sorry. He says, it's just that when you know, criticize my singing like that, and he put his arm around my shoulder and he's, you know, making it up to me and all that. And ever since then, we were friends. That's how I met Gene.
Unbelievable. I mean, Gene was always chased around a block in New York and with all the gangs due to, because he couldn't speak English properly, and not only that, he came from Israel and that.
Well, here's what happened, to get to your question now.
Yep.
I wasn't privy to what happened to Gene before I met him in 7th grade, but he told me. He said when he was little, and, you know, he lived in Brooklyn when he first came over here, the kids would be across the street, the older punks, you know, and they'd look at him and they'd say, hey, you. He says, me? Go, yeah, you. Come over here. He says, me? Okay, I go. So he goes across the street, and they beat him up.
Yeah.
So after that, he says he went to the gymnasium and he learned how to box so he could protect himself. And, of course, he got taller and bigger, you know. But by the time I met him, he was 225, 240, and he's about 6'1.5", and I'm 6'3", and I was 175. So he was big enough that most people, to answer your question, most people did not bother him in school. There was one time he did get in a fight in the schoolyard, which I saw.
Yeah. And I know he had a sweet tooth. He always loved the cakes and all those things. And that's probably why he put on that little bit of weight and a little bit of muscle. I mean, he learned how to box, like you said. I believe what you just said also, with the sweet tooth that he had.
That's funny. That's funny that you say that, because one of his helpful suggestions, you know, Gene always tries to, you know, help people by offering ideas, and he was always like that. I said, you know, I'm working out, Gene, with weights and everything, with barbells, but I'm having trouble gaining weight. So, of course, what does he tell me? He says, Steve, eat cake. I said, that's not the kind of weight I want to gain, you know.
Well, but, look at Gene Knight. You saw Gene just recently this year up on the North American tour just recently, and we will go into a bit of that later on, but he has lost weight just recently.
Yeah, he definitely trimmed down. He's keeping himself pretty much together, I would say.
Yeah, and even his son Nick he's lost a hell of a lot of weight due to, we watch him on the Family Jewels, and just recently, I was just saying, man, he's lost a ton of weight. But all praise for him.
I guess Shannon got after him, maybe. Who knows, But you got me started on that 7th grade thing. I want to tell you another a good little story you'll like. Again, this is like within the first week of the beginning of 7th grade, after we became friends.
Yeah.
I went over to his mother's apartment. He lived about 5 blocks away from me in Jackson Heights, Queens, New York. And this is the origin of Gene's tongue that I'm about to tell you.
Yeah.
So we go in the kitchen. It's afternoon, like 3:30 in the afternoon after school. His mom's not home. She's working. And we go in his kitchen, and then there's a tall mirror on one wall. So, how boys are. They're, comparing and showing off to each other. So he says to me, hey, can you do this? And he takes his ear and he folds it over. His ears are like big and floppy. And he takes his ear and he folds it over inside the rest of the ear. Then he pushes the bottom, and the ear pops back out again. I said, no, I can't do that. Then he takes his arm, like the back of your arm where you got your tricep muscle, Jamie, and he straightens his arm straight down. And he flexes it so you're supposed to see the horseshoe shape of the tricep. But Gene's arm was so fat, that you really didn't see any shape to it. So then I did it in the mirror, and of course I was leaner and I was working out too, so you saw the shape right away of the tricep muscle. So he goes, he didn't like that. Then he says, can you do this? And all of a sudden, that famous tongue of his comes out, snakes out, he touches the tip of his nose with it, and it goes back in. And I was speechless.
Well, I love it when he gets asked, can you stick your tongue out and touch your nose? And yeah, he actually sticks his tongue and then he points his finger on his nose. So I do that too. I mean, my partner is so, I'll tell you a story, and I don't think the listeners know about this. How my partner, who I'm going to marry next year, and I got together was because of my tongue. And I do have a slight Gene tongue myself, but the thing is, it was only for my own amusement. It wasn't to attract females like Gene obviously became. Mine was only for my amusement. I was mucking around in my bedroom with a tennis racket pretending I was Gene. I was living like Gene. I grew my hair like Gene. I was trying to act older than I actually was. Instead of being 16,
cow, I can't believe that. That's wild. That's something.
Yeah, instead of being 16, I was 19. That's what my philosophy was. And yes, I got the girls. I mean, I'm not trying to blow my trumpet here, but that was the lifestyle I was. I was sticking my tongue out, and I'm saying in a month's time, when I was mucking around in the bedroom, I was looking at myself in the mirror, stick my tongue. Oh my shit, my tongue grown a little bit bigger. Then as it went on and on, it grew bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's like, Gene, you've done something, But that was the transformation of growing up, and that's how my partner and I met. Yeah.
Jamie, he influenced you a lot. I can see you had a blast because of Gene. That's so funny.
Yeah, it was, and I'm still spun out when my partner, every time we go down the bar on a Friday night to do karaoke, she will see her female friends, and she said, you know how we met? Jamie, stick your tongue out. And I'll be like Jane sometimes. I know the floor's dirty. Then I go and stick your tongue out, and the girls get off on it. They just squiggle and shake, and I'm saying, okay, I get it. Go back into your space and whatnot. But, yeah, that's how it all happens with me. But, Gene, I just want to ask, did Gene always have that long tongue? I mean, there's been rumors speculating in the Kiss world, especially in the 70s, that it was a cow tongue sewn on, or you had that little attachment underneath tongue cut off. But you were there. You grew up with him, basically, as a childhood friend. Did he always have that?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The first week of 7th grade, when we were at his mother's apartment, he snaked that tongue out at me and asked me, can I do that? And, of course, that tongue was not sewn on. That's his real tongue, In 7th grade, he had no money to have a tongue grafted onto his tongue. That's him, sure.
Yeah. So all those rumors can be blown out of the water now, and you just clarified the truth there, Steve. And we all know, I knew that it was a real tongue and whatnot, but there are stories out there that's been twisted, been sugar-coated. They can believe what they want to believe, but you were there, you know the story, and you just mentioned it just 5 minutes ago. But also, I would like to know what your other hobby was. Before we get into the music side of things, you and Gene wrote a lot of comic books together, like fanzines from your home, and you did like a drawings, and you've done some animation, both you and Gene. How did that all came about? Whose vision was it? Was it a mutual thing that you and Gene had because you both were comic book fanatics and heroes fanatics, or was it just say, hey, I had this idea, but I need you to help me with this?
Well, it was two different things. I was an artist. I like to draw stuff. And Gene was an artist too, but I guess I was, really the better of the two artists. But Gene liked to write about all the famous monsters. He had Famous Monsters of Filmland magazines, which was a very popular magazine at the time, and now they're all collector's items. And I had them too, and we used to look at all the movies and all the classic movies also were coming out in the early 60s in the movie theaters. So, our heads were filled up with monsters and all these great movies and all these great stories. So he told me, actually, that he was going to publish an amateur science fiction fanzine because he had seen that a lot of other people were starting to do that. So he started to do that as well, and he asked me if I would do some of the illustrations for it. So I said, yeah, sure, I'd love to do that. And that's how we wound up collaborating on that.
Yeah. Now, I've always asked every comic book fan this. Are you a DC fan or a Marvel fan, or both?
Yeah, both, definitely both. Because, first, being when I grew up, DC was out first, and, Superman, we were all into that. And then Marvel came along a few years later, and, then Spider-Man and all that stuff came out. So I like all of it is great,
And also, Kiss brought their Marvel comic book out in '77, and yeah, they've also become superheroes to a lot of fans as well, especially the young generation as well. But just before we lead into Wicked Lester, there's one thing that came out early this year, and you posted up on our podcast page, that secret handshake. Now, this goes back way back. How did all that came about? Whose idea was this secret handshake? Because it was hilarious when I saw it at the meet and greet this year.
To be perfectly honest, that is something that Gene already knew. He had gotten it from somebody or made it up. I'm not sure which. But one day, again, around 7th or 8th grade, we were hanging out or something, and he says, hey, let me show you how to do this secret handshake or something to that effect, where, he wanted to, do it with me, and he showed me what to do. And he says, you slap your hands, boom, 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 back and forth with the other guy 7 times. Then you snap your fingers. Then you slap your thigh. Then you take your arm and run it across and wipe your nose. And then you give the other guy 5. And we used to do that all the time. The thing was, I don't think he's done that in a long time, which is why it was so amazing, because when I came up to him, I thought of it, and I says, hey, Gene, you still remember the secret handshake? And he looks at me and he goes, of course. So all of a sudden we just did it. And his manager, Doc McGee, was standing behind us about 10 feet away. His mouth was open. He's looking at us. He's saying, what are these two guys doing? Everybody in the room was like, what? It was funny. It was fun. That was a pisser.
What was the story for the secret handshake? That's what I like to know. What was the reason for the secret handshake?
Well,
was it just a message that you two collaborated?
It's like when you have a boys' club. You have initiation. You have secret handshakes. You have things that show that you're part of that group of people. Kids used to do that kind of thing. We had secret initiations that if you knew the handshake, if you had certain signs that you make to the other person, I think people probably still do that. The kids probably still do that these days, but that's what it was.
Yeah, and I've got to say, it was well choreographed, or well put together on the video clip. I've seen the video clip, so has David, and we both came to agreement it's well choreographed. So many years time by, he, like you said, he knew the exact movement that you knew, and it just,
Yeah.
you know. But let's go on to the next thing, and this is the story that a lot of people don't know. How did you and Paul get together before the arrangement of Wicked Lester? How you introduced to Gene to Paul? How did you and Paul meet up?
Well, it went through a series of people. I met another fella, and we were jamming together, and he had a friend, and then we were jamming with him. And they knew this guy, Stanley Eisen.
Yep.
So what happened was one day I took the train because I lived in Manhattan. I was born and raised in, Washington Heights at the top of Manhattan in New York City. I took the train out to Kew Gardens in Queens, and Stanley drove to pick me up from the subway station. And he came up and he picked me up. I guess we must have been about 18, 19 years old. He came in an old green Mustang that I guess his parents had bought him because, he couldn't have been more than 18 years old at the time. So he came and he picked me up in the Mustang. And, we were sitting and talking about music and everything. And he said he had some songs and he needed to play with a guitar player. And I had been recommended to him. So that's how we got together, and we became friends at that point. We started playing with a couple other guys, and we, formed a band. I was free from Gene at that moment. I think Gene had just started school at that point up in Sullivan County Community College. I think that's why I wasn't playing with him, and I wound up hooking up with Stanley for several months, and we started a band.
Now, you and Gene were doing, like, school gigs in gymnasiums, and also you've done some, what they call, if I remember correctly, it was a Jewish word for like a celebration. It was like a ceremony type of thing. Did you do the same thing with Paul as well, like the same type of performance, not performance, but concert-wise or gigs-wise? Because from what I saw in Gene's book, how he was playing, you guys were playing in Bullfrog Beer and so forth. We didn't actually hear much about what you did with Paul. Like, I know there was a photo just recently been popped up of Paul. It's like he's got a bobcat haircut. It looks like one of the Beatles.
That's right.
Yeah, and he has like a suit on with a tie. Were you playing in that gig? I think it was at a high school football field or something like that, or an auditorium, outside auditorium.
No, he was too young at that point. We hadn't met up yet. That was his junior high school picture. I know the one you're talking about. He looks like a poor, sad little kid. I know that picture.
And a big, massive sideburns.
You reminded me of something else I wanted to tell you, about Gene and I, because, we had, about 10 years together of growing up as teenagers practically every day. You know that, I don't know if the folks out there know this, but Gene's first bass cabinet, his first speaker cabinet that he had was what I showed him, what I built for him, and I let him help me. My grandfather had shown me how to build a speaker cabinet the month before, so we were forming a band, and he needed an amplifier, and we went home from school down by his apartment, and outside his apartment building was this big old wooden TV set. I said, Gene, we can use this, and we're going to make a speaker cabinet. He says, really? I said, yeah. So we brought it upstairs, got rid of all the guts inside of it, cleaned it out, got a piece of plywood, cut a hole in it, speaker goes in the hole, covered the whole thing, glued it, with the black Colex covering so it would look like a real cabinet, and we got a silver sparkle grill cloth that we bought. I guess I must have got it in Manhattan, probably got it in Manhattan. And we covered the baffle with that, and it looked like a speaker cabinet. He used that for years.
Does he still have it now, or you wouldn't know that now?
That's a good question. I never asked him that. That is a good, because he keeps everything. He may very well, he has a picture. I drew a picture of him as a mouse character. He looked like an early 40s Mickey Mouse character, but he's playing that white Segovia bass, that imitation Beatle bass that he had. But I gave it to him years ago, so I don't have it anymore. But I bet he has that too. Oh, I didn't tell you something else. You know how we learned how to play bass?
how did he learn how to play bass?
Okay. Well, again, going back to when we started our band, don't forget the Beatles had just come out that year. The beginning of 7th grade for us was a huge year. It was 1963. 3 weeks into school, the Beatles came to America, and all hell broke loose musically.
Yeah.
So we formed a band with another fellow. He's gone now from us, but he was a great guy, Seth Dalgramagian. He was another singer, and he played rhythm guitar. So we formed a band, the three of us, and we started doing all the Beatles songs. But thing was, we didn't have a bass player. So I looked at Gene, and, I said, hey, you could play bass. And he says, I'd love to do that. He says, I love my Paulie. He called Paul McCartney Paulie. He said, I love Paulie. So he definitely wanted to play bass. So his mother gave him money, and we went down to town in Manhattan. We went down to 48th Street, where, it's like the big music block in Manhattan. And we looked in one window, and there's this white, looks like a white Beatles bass. Looked like the Hofner bass, but, it was a Japanese copy. It wasn't the real thing.
Yep.
And it was $65, I remember. So he bought that, and he took that thing home, and boy, was he happy. He learned, I showed him where the notes were on the bass guitar. I said, here's the open string is the E, then the first fret is the F, and, the third fret is the G, fifth is the A, and so on. So he started learning. He says, boy, this is hard to do. It's like you have to sing and play something different at the same time while you're singing. It's not so easy, playing a melody on the bass while you sing. Because, all the songs like McCartney and all those guys, they weren't what they call now root canal bass players. These guys played melodies that are counterpoint to the thing that you're singing with your vocal, So it's a little tricky to learn to do it. But Gene learned how to do it after. He got very good at it, as you know. But that's how we learned how to play bass, and that's the first bass that he got.
Well, he even admitted that he was a very sloppy bass player because he was more of a guitar player type of bass player because he always had to have a guitar pick in his hand, and all he knew was 4 chords. But as we know, most of the songs that are written that are hits these days are on a 4 chord bar. You can change the pattern of a 4 chords, and you can create any song you want.
That's right.
But I also like to know, how did Paul started to become a rhythm guitarist, if you know? Or was he already a guitarist when you met him?
Yeah, when I met him, he already was a guitar player, a rhythm guitarist. He, because as I said, he was already 18 years old, so I guess he had been playing a couple of years with his own bands, just like Gene and I played with the band called the Long Island Sounds for 6 or 7 years, we had.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you just finished what you're saying. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say that we were pretty well equipped at one point because my grandfather was a great guy. He bought me a Marshall stack in 1967, the original Plexi 100-watt head, and the 412 bottoms, the whole thing. And he also got Gene. He also bought Gene a 200-watt Marshall Major head that I think Gene saved for part of it, but my grandfather kicked in on part of it also. So by the time we were 16, 17, we had, we also had a Hammond organ that my grandfather bought for us used that Seth Dalgramagian, the other singer, used on stage. So when we did songs, like the Chambers Brothers, Time Will Come Today, we did Moby Grape, we did Give Me Some Lovin' by Spencer Davis, was one of our big songs, with Stevie Winwood singing it. And Seth would do that on the Hammond organ, and we had the Marshall stacks, and, we were a pretty big, loud band.
Was that Hammond organ, was that a limited edition? Because my father got one, and it had a gold plate medallion on the board that you pulled down on it. Was that a limited edition Hammond organ? Because my father had one.
Well, this was taken out of, the regular big Hammond B3 organ. That's that big wooden cabinet that you carry around to all the shows. I found one where they had taken the organ out of the big wooden case, and they built a black plywood case for it with 2 metal handles on either side. So you could actually, 2 guys could easily pick it up, put it in the back of a station wagon or a little van, and still get that sound, take it to the gig, but still get that big Hammond sound. And that's what we had that we let Seth play when we played live.
Yeah. Yeah, because my dad had like an organ that was like a keyboard. It had the top and the bottom, and it made out of wood.
Yeah, that's what this was. Yeah. That's what this was. It had two sets of keyboards and the slide bars, the whole thing.
Yeah, and this one that my father had a gold medallion in it. It was a limited edition, and he said, Jamie, when I die, get that gold out of it because you'll be a millionaire. It's just solid gold. I don't know how much gold is there, but he said, just whatever you do, get in my toolbox, chisel it out, and keep it. And just keep it and keep it. I said, why would I want to do that for? If I want the organ, I'll take the organ. He said, no, take the gold. I said, all right, I'll take the gold. But
that sounds like a very unusual organ to have a real piece of a real gold medallion in it, Jamie. That's great.
Yeah, well, this was in Australia when he came from England. So yeah, he's a massive Beatles fan like you guys were as well. So that's how I got him to play the drums. He taught me how to play the drums because that was his music. But he didn't like. This is the thing. He didn't like the Americanized versions of rock and roll. He's a bit of a hypocrite. He comes from England or Scotland. My father. He loved the British rock and that. But when he came to Australia, he got into Elvis. I'm saying, but you don't like the Americanized rock, Dad. You know, you don't like it. But it was a bit of a hypocrite. So I loved it. I love all rock and roll music. I love what you guys did and also what came out after that. But let's get into the good bits, and I think the fans will love to hear this. It's been written in the Nothing to Lose book, and I don't know how much is going to be documented in the Kiss movie documentary that's coming out next year, because you have been in part of that. That meeting in the house when you introduced Gene to Paul, and you were like a fly on the wall, like, hey, these two guys here, they're eyeballing each other. Paul doesn't like Gene because of his outspokenness and his rudeness. But let's get your true, well, not your true, but your story of that incident meeting and how it all began with you.
Well, what happened was Gene called me up one day before he met Stanley. You know, Gene called me up a few weeks earlier, and he was out in New Jersey with a guy named Brooke Ostrander. He was the keyboard player who was later to be in, Wicked Lester with us. And they were working together a little bit. This was when I was with Stanley playing in the band, and Gene had gone off to school, and somehow he had met Brooke. And so he called me up, and he says, hey, you want to join the band? I said, sure. So I came out to Brooke's apartment, and we all got together, and, we started playing. And then we were trying to think, we needed another guy who could sing, vocal harmonies and play rhythm guitar. And Gene says, do you know anybody? Well, what have you been doing? I says, oh, I have a guy in mind. I says, I have this guy Stanley. I think, you might like it. He's pretty good. So Gene came down to see us play a gig. We were playing in Manhattan near Columbia University on Broadway. It was like about 100th Street on Broadway in New York City. And I remember Gene was sitting in the front row. We were playing in this club where you had to go down the stairs, almost like the Cavern clubs, like where the Beatles played when they first played. So you had to go downstairs in Manhattan, down to this club, and that's where we were playing. And I remember Gene was sitting in the front row, and he had his chin on his fist, leaning down on his knees, staring at us, studying us while we're playing, So, he saw Stanley play. He didn't really say much about it, and that was that. But then later on, like a couple of weeks later, he says, "It's all right." He says, if you want to, he says, I'll meet him. So I says, okay, good. So I called up Stanley, and I said, look, why don't you come to my apartment at the good Central spot, and we'll meet there, and you can meet my friend Gene, and, he can meet you, and maybe you'll join the band with us. And he says, okay, cool. Stanley's, is a very easygoing, nice guy. And what happened was this. Gene and I were at my apartment already earlier, and so we were just waiting for Stanley towards the evening. And I remember I heard the doorbell ring. I went over to answer the door, and there's Stanley, and he's got his pea coat on, he's got a guitar case, and he bops in, and he goes, hey, how's it going, like that, and, I shake his hand, and I bring him into the living room, and there's Gene leaning against the radiator under the windows, up in Washington Heights, Manhattan, and he's just looking at him, he's not really saying anything. So Stanley bops over to him and goes, hey, good to meet you, and Gene says, yeah, hi. Mm-hmm. So Gene says to Stan, hey, why don't you play something? How Gene can be very curt. So he says, hey, why don't you play something? So Stanley goes, yeah, sure. So he puts his guitar case down, he takes that out. And as soon as he starts to play and sing, you know, it sounded pretty good. And I could see Gene is looking at it, and he's a little bit, you know, not smiling, and he's, you know, he's not laughing either. He's just, you know, he's just thinking or something. So then, you know, he played another song, and he played another song. And these were original songs that Stanley did. You know, Stanley was into English music at the time. He liked The Move. He liked some of the British groups, the early British groups. Gene and I were into the American groups. Besides the Beatles, you know, we were into Cream and Mountain, you know, with Leslie West and Jimi Hendrix. You know, But Stanley knew some of the groups that more of the in people from, you know, Great Britain might have known those groups better than a lot of us Americans. So when he was done, Gene wasn't very, you know, friendly or anything. He just says, "Oh, okay, that was great. Nice meeting you," something to that effect. You know, really had nothing much to say. Just leaning against the radiator with his arms folded, looking at him, you know. And he says, "Oh," Stanley goes, "Oh, okay, man, really good," you know. And he packs up his stuff, and he gives me a little look, you know. And he says, "I'll talk to you." I says, "Okay, Stan." I let him out the door. And I said, "Gene, what's the matter?" You know, he says, "Oh, I don't know," you know. Well, as it turned out, you know, there's a story that a lot of people have heard. Stanley tells it, Paul Stanley tells it, and I tell it too. Gene used to think in the musical hierarchy, you know, in music hierarchy, you know, who's at top, who's at bottom. He says, first there's the Beatles. Gene thought first there were the Beatles, then there's me, Gene, and then there's everybody else. He didn't know that anybody else could write songs. He thought because he invented writing songs, you know, when you're a kid and you come up with something, you think it's the best thing in the world until you found out somebody else could do it too. So when he saw Stanley, he realized not only was there Gene, there's also Stanley. So he, you know, and Stan caught the bad vibes right away. So he called me up and he says, "Look," he says, "you have to make a choice." He says, "It's either him or it's me." Yeah. So I was in the middle, you know. But as it turned out, Gene came around. He thought about it. I guess he, you know, his feathers got ruffled, and then he, you know, he got himself together, and he called me back up. And he says, "Yeah, why don't you have him come out there? Let him come out to New Jersey." You know, so like a week or two later, we drove out to New Jersey to meet Brooke and Gene, and then we all started to get along really well. Once Gene accepted him, you know, and moved over a little on his seat on the king's throne to make room for Stanley, everything was fine after that.
And Gene would be the first guy. He was a complete arrogant son of a bitch. He even said that numerous times. He was very arrogant. Gene and Paul were not on the same level at the start. Paul literally hated Gene's arrogance and whatnot because he thought he knew better, that it was him and everyone was basically below him. But how it all came in a transition from that first initial meeting to what came into Wicked Lester, things started to fall into place. There was obviously some type of chemistry there. Now let's talk about that chemistry. How was it for you when that problem was resolved and the chemistry started to make a shapeshift?
In a word, it was terrific. We got along like a bunch of brothers. I mean, there's nothing more exciting, as you know, than being in a band together and feeling good about the guys you're with, and that's exactly how we felt. We were excited to go to rehearsal every day. We rented the loft down in Canal Street, as a lot of the fans know. It was above the Norman Watch Company on Canal Street in Chinatown. And there was also no heat in the loft. There was a sculptor who owned the loft rented us the back room. You know, it was a walk-up. It was on the second floor of the walk-up, right above the store, the Norman Watch Company store. So we'd bop up there in the winter, and we rehearsed like in the winter of 1970. It was freezing up there. And we didn't mind, though. We had our coats on when we were playing, but we didn't mind. We got along really well. We had a lot of fun together and a lot of kidding around and, you know, a lot of joking and, you know, just real camaraderie. Very nice. The one thing that was funny was, you know, Stanley and I, before, like sometimes we'd bump into each other. You know, he was coming from Queens. I was coming from the, you know, Washington Heights and the top of Manhattan. And we'd arrive at the same time, and he'd say, "Hey, you want to go get a bottle of wine?" I said, "Yeah." So we go over to the little Chinese man's liquor store there, and we get a bottle of the cheap bums wine, you know, like the Rock Duck, like the Night Train or Belly High or Apple wine by Boone's Farm, which just came out that year. And we come up with a bottle of wine in a little brown paper bag. And Gene was sitting up there, and we were already drinking it. So we were already, you know, 3 sheets to the wind by the time we got up there. Gene looks at us. He's so pissed off. And he says, "Why do you guys have to drink that stuff?" And me and Stan look at each other, and we start giggling like two girls because we're drunk, you know. So, yeah, we had a lot of fun. I mean, and then, of course, we got down to work anyway. But, you know, that's the way it went sometimes.
Yeah, and just before we go on, we did speak just before this recording. Was Wicked Lester, how it all came about with Wicked Lester, leading up to the recording contract, or the first initial recording of the debut album, which never got released, of course. Did you guys play at any venues leading up, like Kiss did, like they played in the Daisy, the Coventry, Long Island? Did you guys did the same thing? Because you obviously rehearsed together like Kiss did in the loft and what they used to do. But did you guys do any gigs and got approached by a record company, or did you just have this vision and say, no, this is how we are, we're going straight to the record studio?
No, we played a couple of gigs with Wicked Lester. We played one down in Atlantic City where we rented a little van and we had to drive down to Atlantic City to play. I think we also played a theater out in Queens somewhere, and I think there was one other gig that we played. But we did, you know, we really didn't, you know, it's like we didn't really fit in. We went and we played, and we didn't really do a good job at the gigs. I don't think we were the kind of band that they wanted to hear at the time. We didn't, you know, have a great set of songs that, you know, went for some of these type of people who wanted to hear something other than what we were offering. We did a lot of cover material, and we did a couple of, you know, the original songs that we had before we wrote She or Going Blind or Love Her All I Can, and all that stuff. But
which later came on to a classic Kiss album, yeah, Love Her All I Can. I mean, I do believe there was another Kiss-related song. It was similar to called Shout It Out Loud, but it's a different arrangement. But yeah, that obviously came on the Kiss album Destroyer. And he also done She, I think, a couple of other Kiss songs that later came on the Kiss albums as well. I mean, let's talk about the two songs that got into my head, Too Many Mondays and also Stanley the Parrot. Can you just tell the fans the story behind Stanley the Parrot? Because most people think that song was about Paul Stanley, and I've heard another story that's not the case.
That's right. First of all, Too Many Mondays I really don't know much about. That was really Stanley's baby, so that I can't tell him, but I can sure tell you about Stanley the Parrot. And I'll tell you what the song turned into, which some people don't know. There was a guy that I played with and Gene played with all through our teenage years, named is Stan Singer. Now he's Stanley Michael on Facebook. If anybody wants to say hello to him, he's a great guy. We just hooked back up the last year, and it's great seeing him. I've known him since I was 14 years old. He's living down in Dallas, Texas now. So anyway, Stanley was the drummer throughout our years, and before he left, when we formed Wicked Lester, he was coming down to the rehearsal loft in Norman Watts' company with me and Gene, and we were playing together still. And, Stanley's a bit of a wise ass, and, of course, Gene is arrogant. And then, we're all being Jewish, we have a certain way of, like, throwing words at each other. So Stanley and Gene used to go at it all the time, being smart-ass to each other. Stanley would call him, "Hey, prick." He'd say to Gene, "Hey, prick." And Gene would say, he'd say something back to Stanley. Anyway, one day I guess Gene decided, I'm going to fix him good. Gene comes into the loft and he says, "Stanley, I wrote a song about you." And Stanley goes, "Oh, yeah, what's that?" And he went out and he played this song for us called Stanley the Parrot. He had actually done a demo recording on his little 2-track machine that he had at home. So we got to hear this whole thing that he did of Stanley the Parrot, where he sounds like he was trying to do something, by The Who or something, by Pete Townsend, But that was the song that we all know as Stanley the Parrot. So, yes, Stanley the Parrot is about Stan Singer. It's not about Stanley Eisen. I know a lot of the fans are saying, well, how can that song have been written about Stanley Eisen? Because Gene hadn't met him yet. And very few people know what I know, the reason is because it's about Stan Singer.
Yeah. And I just got the clarification as I was doing my research. I said, no, Gene never crossed paths yet with Stanley Eisen.
That's right.
About 2 or 3 years, probably even 4 years before that, the demo was recorded.
That's right. And the thing is that a lot of people also don't know is that after I was out of the Wicked Lester band and Stanley and Gene were, reorganizing for their new band, Gene really didn't have that many rock and roll songs. Stanley had some rock songs, and of course I had written She with Gene and Going Blind with Gene, which is another story unto itself. But Stanley, Gene had that song, Stanley the Parrot, and Stanley Eisen looked at it and he says, and he basically, he chopped it up, he threw away everything except the set of chords, I think, from the verse, and he turned it into what we all know now as the song Strutter.
Yes. But that's a question I want to ask you before we get into the downfall, and then also we've got some other questions what you're doing now, and also the Kiss Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. How many songs did you put towards, or had written, whether it was a demo or whether that you haven't released as such, put towards Wicked Lester? Now, will we ever get to see the Wicked Lester album come out, or would you do a whole complete new recording, new arrangements, or new band members or whatnot? How many songs did you put? The first part of the question is, how many songs did you put towards the band? And also, if there is any other recordings that weren't done on the album, will we actually get to see some form of light coming out later on?
Well, the songs that I did with Gene that we wound up playing in Wicked Lester, were She and Going Blind. What happened with that, it's funny how things cause you to write songs, Jamie, and the reason those two songs exist is very simple. I went down to Manhattan and I bought a new electric guitar. It was made by the acoustic company who made those big acoustic amps that were really cool amps back then, and it was called the Black Widow. And it looked like a Mosrite guitar, like the Ventures Mosrite guitar, which I also owned, except that this guitar was all black, so I was all excited. I'm 19 or 20 years old, and I get home with this guitar, and I said, boy, I got to write something on this now. And within a half hour, I wrote the chords to She. But I didn't have any words and only a little bit of an idea of a melody. So that night at rehearsal with Wicked Lester, I brought it into Gene, and I said, what do you think of these chords? And he liked the whole thing. He thought it sounded great. So he kind of closed his eyes. I remember he's standing there, and I was sitting there playing, and he started to sing, She Walks by Moonlight, ba-ba-bum-bum, ba-ba-bum-bum. And I stopped, and I looked at him, and I said, what do you mean she walks by moonlight? Who are we talking about, Pocahontas? And he explained.
What was the reason? Because there was a flute in She compared to what later came up. Who made that arrangement? I know you
Okay, I can tell you all about that real quick. Yeah. The way we rehearsed in Wicked Lester is the way Kiss sounded. When we got the recording, free time recording time with Ron Johnson at Electric Lady Studios, Ron, was a pop producer. He had done a song called Me and You and a Dog Named Boo. So enough said about that. So he put in, Brooke Ostrander was a very good flute player. The guy who played keyboards in Wicked Lester, and he could play a lot of instruments. He was a junior high school music teacher. So Ron Johnson enlisted Brooke to play the flute on that, and he turned it into like a Jethro Tull kind of a song. It was like a lot of different styles all being tried out, I guess, in that poor song. And all that song was supposed to be was a crunching, heavy rock song, the way Kiss actually wound up doing it.
And it's just, I haven't heard the original version of She that you guys did. I only know the Kiss version of She. I wish you had a guitar somewhere, or if you can do a video for the podcast page of the arrangements of the original She version, because that would be mind-blowing. I really would. Just to go back to the original format, just strip everything back to the way it was, and just hear the original format. the question I like to ask is, how do you compare yourself, now, before we get into the downfall, of course, how do you compare yourself as a guitar player compared to Ace Frehley? What later came, like playing your songs, of course, but with you're on a different playing field or different technique than Ace Frehley. I mean, it was a great way that Ace brought in, but the original format of that song, like She and Strutter or Let Me Love Her All I Can and that, and Going Blind.
Well, I'll give you an answer. I'll give you an answer real quick. The thing that I had problem with, Ace was more fortunate than me. Let's put it that way. So as far as comparing players, is that it's more a question of fortune. You know, when you go in and you rehearse and record a song, you record and you try things out until you get it right. And the only way you can do that is if you can, first of all, you're hearing, you have to hear the song. When we used to rehearse that song, we rehearsed it in the loft. We played so loud when we rehearsed in Wicked Lesson. We played so loud you could not hear me play lead guitar. I had no idea half the time. I wasn't working on a guitar part. I was just playing something, playing something.
Yeah.
When you make a record, or like if you heard my demo on, let's say, on YouTube, where I do Chasing the Night, that was all thought out. It's a rough-sounding demo, but all the parts, as you can tell, are thought out, and it shows. And I was capable of doing the same thing 30 years ago. It's just that we didn't have the time or the mechanisms in place to work that way, to really put out a finished recording. And with Ron Johnson, it was like, okay, Steve, go in and do your guitar part. Well, I didn't have a guitar part worked out yet. I had never really sat down with that song and, like when you sit in front of a tape recorder and you work on your guitar till you say, oh, this is what I want to say on this song with this guitar. I didn't have that luxury. We were in on free spec time at Electric Lady Studio, so we had to just go in and do it like in the middle of the night whenever we could. Whereas when Ace finally did the song with them, they had a very good idea of what the sound was going to be. And, of course, Ace is a very talented guitar player and still is,
I'll give him all the credit. I mean, he brought that to the band. I mean, you brought what you had to brought in for Wicked Lester, but on the flip side of the coin, Ace brought that other rawness to that different spectrum of what the band became. You know what I mean? No disrespect to what you've done, but you've done great in your guitar work, and then 2 years later, when it came on Hotter Than Hell.
But what I'm saying is not to cut you short, but what I'm saying is, when we used to play in our teen years, and we did Cream, and we did Leslie West, we did Mountain, it sounded great. When we tried to go in and record She, that isn't the way I wanted to do that song. If we had worked on that song quietly, sitting, really working on the song, it would have sounded a whole lot better. That's why the Wicked Lester recordings are all a little bit strange sounding. I mean, I know the fans all like them, and they'll dispute me on that, but even Stanley, Paul Stanley, does not like those recordings. And much as they're well done, there's a lot of things that, just aren't right about them. And that's, that's one of the things I'm trying to bring out. It's,
Well, the 2 questions I want to ask just before we get onto the positive again. Now, when there was a downfall. There was a record made. It was put on the shelf. The next minute, you got told that they're going to fire the members, but you guys wanted to go and withhold the contract because you had a contract. But Gene and Paul wanted to take themselves away, but you guys were maintaining, no, we're going to see the contract out, so they fire themselves. But that's not the question I want to ask you.
Well, that isn't accurate though. We had no contract at the time I was in the band. There was no contract yet.
Yeah, and according to Gene and Paul, there was a contract. So that is irrelevant. There was no contract. We know that now from what you said. The question I want to know is how hard...
We had an agreement. We had an agreement with Ron Johnson. We had a contract with Ron Johnson, but there was nothing with any record people.
Yeah. But the question I want to ask is how hard... I mean, you were a school friend with Gene. You were also a buddy with Paul in another band. And you met together. You introduced Gene and Paul, and vice versa. And next minute, they told you the band's over. How hard was it for you? I mean, I want to be light on this. I don't want to dig too deep, because I don't want to get my ass kicked by the band members of Kiss themselves. but I really want to just touch on just lightly here. How hard was it for you being not only a personal friend, but also a composer and a songwriter to what you recorded, and the next minute it never got released?
Well, it was very shocking to me. It's like I like to compare it to, when you find out, and let's say you're 14 years old, right, and you start going out with girls, and you find out the girl is breaking up with you. She doesn't like you, and she's going to go with some other guy. Well, it's like an electric shock goes through your body. It's one of those times in your life where you go, what? What just happened to me? Huh? You're totally shocked. And when Gene came up to my apartment to tell me what he had to tell me, that's how I felt. It was one of those things. It's like if you find out you're getting fired from your job tomorrow, you go, what? You're firing me? It's a very heavy, feeling in you.
Yeah, it's like getting mud on your face, getting thrown at your face, basically. It's like you've been there through thick and thin. You're like brothers, you're like, I've got your back, I've got your back, and the next minute, the carving knife just came straight out. It's like you never existed. All that hard work and all the camaraderie leading up to that record, and next minute, you've got an egg on your face.
Well, much as I didn't like it, I understand it because they thought they had a chance to make it. They thought that Elektra was going to sign them, Epic was going to sign them, and they were going to get a record out. And all they had to do was get rid of me and get another guitar player that fit in better. So, an opportunity like that, I guess you have to choose between your brother or yourself.
Yeah. But no disrespect to Kiss. If you can only say what I can say now. Look what Kiss became. They're a phenomenon. Something had to. I don't like it, but I understand why it happened. If it didn't happen, we would have got what we got now. We would have still had the same type of music the way it is now, or would it been the way that you wanted it, or the way that you designed She, and all that. Who would have known? That's a big what if. But there's one question I want to ask, and you did put a photo up a couple of months ago of a drawing. Now, there was talk, quote me if I'm wrong here, there was talk around the Wicked Lester's days, before all the downfalls happened, of creating costumes or coming up with some type of concept for the band. Excuse me. You drew an Egyptian type of drawing. Do you not have much recollection of that drawing itself?
Yeah, of course. By the way, this is funny, so I went into my the big black history books, and I did a couple of cell phone snapshots of the excerpts of Gene talking and drawing pictures of costumes and ideas that we thought about in Wicked Lester. Because Gene said, hey, we're never going to make it. We're not doing well. We should wear costumes, and, he says, I'm going to breathe fire and all this type of stuff. And so I went home, and I said, hey, let me draw up something. So I drew up this thing where I had this Egyptian costume, with wings and all this thing that I drew. And that's where that drawing came from.
And I did say to you in a private message, that image that was drawn, that you drew, was totally identical to Vinnie Cassano, who was Vinnie Vincent, who played the Egyptian Ankh warrior on the Creatures of the Night tour. And I know you don't have much recollection of it, but it does look very, very similar. From this concept that you drew back in the early 70s, and then fast forward to another decade, it's very identical. Very, very identical. Vinnie Vincent and your drawing look very, very same. And it looks like Paul, because according to my research, Paul was the one that created Vinnie Vincent's character. And maybe, just maybe, they used your concept for that character. Who knows? Who knows? But I basically told you this in a private message. I actually thought you got ripped off.
I know. It's like you say, you could look at it both ways. Honestly, though, what's the next good extension? Gene wants to breathe fire. The other guy wants to be something else. Well, you think of what is a grand thing? In all the movies we've seen, I says, gee, Egypt, Siam, something mythical, and it's very possible that Paul thought the same way,
Yeah, and like I said before, I felt like they took an idea from somebody else, which they've probably done to not just for yourself, but they've probably done it to other people. They take an idea and they just multiply it. You know what I mean? And it just comes from somebody. But the question I want to ask you, before we get into your music and what you've been doing now, Kiss in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's going to be a stupid question. I'm going to answer it, but no, I believe no question is a stupid question. Do you think Kiss should be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? And if they should, who should be inducted?
Well, to me, I think they should be. For whatever reasons, you could come up with all kinds of arguments of why this bad isn't good, is good. They're part of American rock and roll history, and whether you like it or not, it's true. They should certainly, and they should have been in sooner. Now it's already like, what, you wait until they're all 70 before you put them in? All the stupid bands that have been put in there, and here's a band that a lot of people love to knock and all this stuff, and you could say you're jealous and this and that, but they did great work. Stanley busted his ass to write great songs and sing great lead. Gene worked his ass off to get where they are. They didn't just sit around and get drunk every night. They worked very hard to get where they are, and they always did, and that's why they kept it up for 40 years, So of course they should be in. And as far as who should be in, well, I guess, that's a delicate question. I mean, you could say, well, look, you have a guy like Bruce, who is a great guitar player. He's well loved by everybody. He keeps his nose clean. People love him. He was part of their thing. I mean, the original iconic Kiss, of course, should be in there with Peter and Ace, The other, I don't know. To me, I'm not sure. When you go into the 80s and 90s, I'm not sure how that should work on a. If you were a museum curator, who would you say is the original version of the dinosaur or the pterodactyl or something? What is the real essence, here? And that's a difficult question for me to answer.
Yeah, because the way I look at it, if I'm correctly, the Hall of Fame, when they tried to induct them back in '99. They're only going to use them as the four original members. Whether or not it was the same thing for 2009 when they were eligible for a nomination again, when they were up for nomination, I think it was the same format that it was only going to be inducted as the four original members. Well, now they've been nominated again after 3 years from the last time. There's been a lot of talk, and it's quite interesting that the whole band should be nominated as a whole, and let's give credit to Bill O'Coin, Sean Delaney, Neil Bogart, and yes, I will say this, and I don't care if the fans like it or not, but you should get recognition for some of the credit as well.
That's very nice. I like that idea.
well, I'm not trying to blow smoke up your backside or anything. I'm just being truthfully. If it wasn't for you getting that arrangement meeting happening between Gene and Paul, there would not be any Kiss. We know that. There's no black or white. That's the fact. That's the truth. So if I believe you should get some type of recognition, whether you already have from Gene and Paul personally, or well and truly good. But from the Rock, if they get inducted in next year in April and they go to the ceremony, I truly believe your name should be mentioned because you were the guy that got the guys together in the first place.
Well, that's from your mouth to God's ears, Jamie.
And whether or not they will get someone from the Caravello family to represent Eric Carr, or whether they'll get Vinnie Vincent, who knows? We could talk of that debate at another time, but yes, Bruce Kulick should be there. They should have someone there from Mark St. John's family. There's a debate about whether or not Eric Singer and Tommy Thaye's been in a band long enough to be eligible because, as I know, 25 years after the first album being released, they're eligible for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nomination. But if they going to do that with the album, what about the lineup changes? 25 years after each lineup change.
That's the thing. It's been such a long. I mean, you could say the same thing about the Allman Brothers. I don't know. I haven't followed it. I don't know if they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or not, but obviously the personnel has changed in that group too, and I don't know how that's handled.
Yeah, because the Eagles got inducted in at the. Look how many members the Eagles had, and they all got all inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Van Halen, it's another band. All the members of Van Halen got inducted into Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Metallica, all the members. What really got up my skin was when Guns N' Roses got inducted in, but only one original member never turned up, and that was Axl Rose, because he fired all the other members of the band. He didn't like them. He actually took them to court because he thought that they were the guys that got me on the drugs, and blah blah blah. But what I'm trying to get at is, if these bands that was not inducted, that got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as the band as a whole, why can't they do it the same with Kiss? It will make everybody happy. But then the argument goes down to, all right, would the four guys, original guys, put the makeup on, or will they go there without makeup, or will they play together? And it's all these what-if type of questions. I mean, I like them to do it like a little jam.
What's that?
Yep. Like, I like them to do a jam.
I'm not following what you said there.
What's that?
What did you say about a jam?
I like the whole members, the surviving members, do a jam together on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Oh, that would be great, yeah.
I mean...
Well, I mean, that's one of the things that I think the fans would love, too. I mean, even if you look at the Kiss Cruise that just passed, if they had let me get my band together and play as the opening band, I think people would freak out more than having some band that Doc McGee hired so he can make an extra $50, like he really, I guess they just don't want to do it, It's I know the fans would go crazy to see, something from the history of Kiss rather than keep pushing new things their way that they're really, just filling space with and not creating any emotional reaction from the fans, and something involving me and some of the other people even would be a big thrill. I mean, I would be thrilled if I were a fan to see this happen. I'm looking at it from the outside,
Well, you should be invited just as a guest anyway, just to go there to see it. Just to see it. Just getting an invitation just to see it. I reckon you should.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. The thing you said about Metallica and all that, I haven't been following the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that much. I didn't realize Metallica was in. Now that just confounds me even more. How could you have Metallica in and not have Kiss in? I mean, what do they all have against Kiss? Are they all that jealous? What's the problem,
Well, that's another argument. It's like when Guns N' Roses was first eligible like 2 years ago. First time they were eligible for Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, they got in. Now, how can they get in before Kiss? And Kiss tried in 99. They tried in 2009. Now, 3 years later, and I believe it's more than a 50-50 chance that they'll get in this time. But we know what comes down to is the board members of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Yes, they think Kiss is not a serious band. They think they're just a manufactured band. Well, that's a question I want to ask you. Do you think Kiss is a manufactured band?
No, of course not. I think what they're objecting to is that there's such a show going on that I can't imagine at this point. I mean, look, you have police officers in the audience. Okay, you have people who protected this country, the troops in the audience. You have firemen in the audience. I mean, you have football players. I mean, who is it that is controlling this situation to make it such a problem that Kiss can't be in the Rock and Roll? If you could have Guns N' Roses with a guy like Axl Rose, look, I love him. I think he's sexy and cool as a lead singer. I'm sorry that band broke up. I love the song Paradise City as a guitar player and a performer. But I got to tell you, if they can all be in, why can't guys like Kiss be in? Stanley's a great songwriter. Gene's a great songwriter. They did great songs. They put on a great show. I don't see the problem.
Yeah, that's the same. I can say the same thing. Why isn't Deep Purple in there? Why isn't Cheap Trick in there? It's just ludicrous. I mean, when you put ABBA and Madonna in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it's like you are taking the name of rock and roll, throwing it out the window, and can put complete garbage. I mean, let me tell you, they're great artists. Oh yeah, ABBA and Madonna are great artists, but they got nothing to do with rock and roll. Nothing to do with rock and roll. For what I know what rock and roll stands for, they literally threw the name of rock out the window and they can just induct anybody that they can think of. I wouldn't be surprised in the next 10 years that Justin Bieber will be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because he's that freaking big right now.
Oh, that would be great.
You know, well, that's the way it's become a joke. If that's the way things are turning out, it's phenomenal. It really is phenomenal. I mean, yeah, there is politics behind it, and I just reckon, you know what? Screw the politics, because rock and roll was not about politics. It was about standing up for what you believe in, having a good time, but rock is the devil music. If you don't like it, well, we'll smash all the records like they did with the Beatles and Elvis, and yeah, they took it the wrong way, you know. And now you got people listening to others' crap and they're committing suicide and whatnot. I mean, it's beyond a joke.
Exactly. Let me ask you a question. Is Alice Cooper in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Yes, he got inducted in last year.
Oh, finally, last year, after being a performer 30 years ago, they finally. That's nice.
Yeah,
wow.
This year they put Rush in.
Gee, you got to be kidding me. Rush is first coming in now?
No, early this year, Rush was nominated into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Oh my God! Who was running this place? My God.
Well, there's two guys that I know. One called from the Rolling Stone magazine, and he live in a basement and is nothing but a dope head, and the other one is just like runs on the panel.
It's unbelievable. I'm stupefied. I've never in my wildest imagination would I think that something like this would come to pass. And rock and roll is not supposed to be touched by, two-party politics like we experience in our country here in the United States, where all this instancy of backstabbing and all these lies. You'd think rock and roll would be more, iconic and more historically accurate, not doing these shenanigans. It's really unbelievable.
Yeah, it's just all these backyard politics and ballroom politics, and it's like being out of a job. You know, there's always discrimination at a workplace, whether religion, sex, race, whatever. There's always some form of discrimination in a workplace. Well, when it comes to Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, this is multiplied by tenfold. I mean, you can sell mega records, but yet they consider you not being a serious band. What is the definition of a serious band? You play instruments, you sing live, you sweat your ass off for 2.5 to 3 hours if you can do that, and yet, no matter where you go around the world, Kiss can sell out stadiums. Kiss, people know who Kiss are. They might not know the guy's name in the band, but they know that's the Demon, that's the Catman, and blah, blah, blah. But my point is, the music today, and I've always been a mouthpiece of this, and I'm very, very passionate about this. I hate the music today that comes out today on the top 40. I literally hate it because it drives me up the wall when they can play it about 5 to 6 times in a 2-hour segment of a radio program here in Australia. The same song can be played up to 5 times in 2 hours.
That's
And I'm
that's part of
saying,
the whole,
okay,
that's part of the whole problem. The whole thing. Look, the guys in the record business now, the guys who are, a bit younger than me and maybe a bit younger than you, and maybe they're tired of hearing what we guys all love, which I call classic rock. Where you have a verse, another verse, the chorus, a verse, then you go into the guitar part, then you go back into verse. We all love those kind of songs, and it's a special trademark of our era, from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. I think a lot of these people wanted to reinvent music. They didn't want to accept it. They want to come up with their own architecture, musically. A lot of the stuff is very good. A lot of stuff has gone back to its grassroots kind of sound. A guy like Jack Jones, I think he's from Australia. A lot of stuff is just great folk song, great music, almost like Bob Dylan, terrific stuff. But a lot of stuff is junk. And there's just, what the problem is, there's too many people that have computers, and because the computer and because GarageBand and all the recording processes on the computer are available to everybody, anybody can make a song now, and they all send it in to the record companies. And the world is so choked with, strangled with so much that the pipelines are choked up. There's no room to get the good music through. Before, when you were a band, only if you were good, somebody would give you free recording time. They bring you into the studio and they let you record because they thought you had some problems. Now everybody and his mother can make their own recording demos. They don't need to go to a studio anymore, so they can send it into people, and they can get people. Yeah.
You can do it. You could do a record demo on a bloody YouTube video clip and send it out. It's like that PSY that did Gundam Style. He'd done a video clip on YouTube, and then the next day he was a megastar.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's not like back in the days that when I was playing in a band, and obviously when you guys were playing in a band, you had to sweat, blood, crawl, do whatever, and even if you don't make a dime, you still gave your best shot. You had to travel. You had to go in the dirtiest places, get the music out. But nowadays, especially here in Australia, they put poking machines in, or the one-armed bandits that, in America, they put them in the bars, and they take the live entertainment away, because it's very, very restricted now here in Australia with live entertainment in a local tavern or a local bar or not. Back in 20 years ago, they had bands playing. You had to play to get your name out there.
Right.
Now, it's not happening. It's just very, very limited at the moment. Very, very limited. And I'm not just saying here in Australia. It could be happening all around the world at the moment. Very, very limited.
Yeah, a lot of people I've talked to on Facebook, they're saying the same thing. There's a lot of good rock bands. They can't even get booked anywhere because people don't want to hear their music. They want to hear, like a lot of the stuff that's on the radio now that is just kind of, I don't know, not great music anymore. But a lot of people don't care about it. They just want to, I don't know.
I'll say this: they might be great. They might be great performers or great artists, but to me, in general, from the music that I was brought up with, it's shit. It's literally shit. I don't care if you're Adele or Rihanna or Lady Gaga. Nah. Let's go back to the way it was done properly and stop ripping off other people's material and putting like a 12 to 24 mix to it and just completely destroy the song. I mean, when I heard a dance rap band here in Australia on a talent show doing an AC/DC song called Black in Black, well, no, it wasn't Black in Black. It was You Shook Me All Night Long. They completely destroyed. I'm going, you gotta be joking. You literally, and that's the thing. To find talent now, it's not like going to a bar and you can sign up a band there on the spot. You got to go through like the X Factor or American Idol talent shows. It's like going to a beauty pageant to see who's the best model. I mean, hey, we all like looking at females, but that's nothing. You can't say that's talent when they haven't written a song before.
I know.
And I've been a mouthpiece for the last 10 years, and I've been very passionate, and people hate me for it. So what? But at least I'm honest. That's all I can be. But anyway, let's get on to your music career. You were in Lover Lover. What's been also happening in your music career as we speak?
Well, we had the band Lover back in the 70s, and we used to play in Manhattan at Max's Kansas City, which was that famous hangout that's gone now, and it became a delicatessen many years ago. So it's a shame. What a great club that was for all of us. That was where Andy Warhol was, and Lou Reed, and the Velvet Underground, and then we took it over in the 70s. Because of my connection with KISS, obviously our band Lover was treated with golden gloves. We were allowed to have meetings there. We were given free dinners and drinks, and we had access to all the floors. There were upper floors there where we could use for private meetings if we wished. So we had a great time, and we worked our asses off to put together our form of rock and roll, which was pretty good. A lot of the fans really liked us. We were a very popular band. We were making $1,000 a night back then, playing a local club. We had a road crew, brought the equipment up the stairs, and the great guys who were dedicated to us. As a matter of fact, some of them are on YouTube now, and came across the demo recordings I made, and I'm trying to find them to get contact with them because I love these guys. We have memories together. But now what I'm working on is taking some of the songs and adding some new songs to it, and taking one or two of the original members, the lead singer, a guy named Danny Nova, a very talented guy, also working on his own musical career over in Europe. He's traveling around in Sweden and Germany now, playing as a solo acoustic artist, doing some of his material. But we're trying to work together to put some version of Wicked Lester back on the road. We have offers from KISS Finland, from Petteri Linnell, the head of KISS Finland. He's going to hook up KISS Sweden and KISS Norway and get us some gigs if we can put a band together. So that's what we're working on right now.
And there's a bit of a birdie told me that you're also planning to come down under for the very first time. Is that true?
Oh, I'm dying to come down to Australia. The more I talk to my friends in Australia, and you know who they are, Jamie. I've been telling you about that. A couple of special friends. And it's a beautiful country. You sent me pictures of it and everything. I'm dying to come down there. I just got to get enough reason to go down there. I got to put it all together.
Well, that David and I will go to it, and we want a backstage pass if we can. No, I'm only joking. I'm only joking. Hey, I might actually get you to show. I might actually show you my Gene tongue, and you might say, "Hey, you got competition here now, Gene." But who knows? Who knows? But no, we've been hearing a rumor that's been going around for the last 18 months. Now, I want your spin on this, and that is Wicked Lester doing a reunion tour.
There is no tour at the time. What happened is, now you can strike this from the record, and you probably should, because I'm not here to actually publicly talk about anybody, but I contacted Tony Zarella through Facebook last year, because a little guy, a friend of ours, a Facebook fan named Adam Hinton, came up to me one night, and he says, "Do you know where I can find Tony Zarella? I'm a drummer, and I'm a big fan of Wicked Lester, and I really like Tony, and I can't find him anywhere." I says, "Well, Adam, did you try to Google him and, really look?" He says, "Wait, I'm going to go look again." So he's a nice kid. I think he's like 16 or 14 years old. And a half hour later, he comes back to me on Facebook. "I found him." I go, "Really?" I hadn't spoken to Tony since Wicked Lester. He says, "Yeah, I found him." So he gave me a link. I looked at the page. There was a phone number there, or there was an email. I contacted Tony. And, when you don't talk to somebody for all those years, you feel great. You say, "Hey, how you been?" And you're talking, and you're having a great time, and talking and talking. I says, "Yeah, I'll put the band together." And I says, "Being that you're in Wicked Lester, would it be interesting?" I'm like philosophical. I throw ideas out there just to see, how it sounds, when you're talking out ideas with your friend. So he says, yeah, that'd be a good idea. So he wanted to get in on it. I says, "All right, I'll give him a chance." And again, off the record, Tony and I were never friends in the band. He went home to New Jersey when he was done for the day. We didn't hang out. We had nothing in common. I'm not going to speak for the other guys, but I don't think, I think there was a rift between us and Tony. Tony himself said one day or several times in rehearsal, he'd get up from behind his drum set and he'd stand there and say, "I feel like I'm in a bubble over here, and you guys are in a bubble over there." And I'm thinking, bubble? He doesn't do acid. What do you mean we're in a bubble here in a bubble? But that was Tony's way of expressing himself, and he's very young at the time, so I've given him all the space. I'm just saying, we were never pals in any way. But I figured, hey, it's 40 years, love talking to Tony. Wouldn't that be a piss? I already have great drummer friends. I don't need Tony for nothing. I just thought, hey, I'll offer him the thing and see if he's interested in doing it, and maybe it'll be good for the, to get things going. Well, the thing was, Tony got impatient, and he didn't listen to me. And he says, I think I'm gonna call up Gene. I says, Tony, I've known Gene for 40 years. When was the last time you spoke to him? Oh, I saw him in the 80s, and I tried to talk to him then about buying some songs from this band I was managing, and he never got back to me. I said, well, Tony, doesn't that tell you something? But now you said you think you're going to call Gene, or you're going to contact Gene. And he wanted to know if I had the email. I said, I'm not giving you the email. I said, you're going to embarrass me. Gene doesn't want me to have people sending him to him that, if he wanted to be in touch with you, he would have been in touch with you. I have Gene's phone number. I have his email. If he didn't give it to you, I'm certainly not going to. Anyway, Tony, I introduced, what I did was I took Tony under my wing, so to speak. I brought him onto Facebook when nobody knew him, and I said, everybody, this is Tony Zarello. I posted it on my page like a year ago. I said, everybody, this is Tony Zarello. He's the original drummer. I gave him a big build-up. I said, please make him feel welcome. I did the same thing with Stan Singer, and Stan Singer deserves it, and he's got a lot of cool things. Stan Singer was cool. Tony decided to start talking to, what's his name, LaRoute, from France, and all these other people, and saying, yeah, I'm putting the band together. He's talking about himself now. He's saying, yeah, I'm putting the band together. I'm putting Wicked Left together. What a fucking asshole. What is wrong with you? So I called him up. My face was red hot. I was yelling at him on the phone. He says, well, I'll get off the phone now. I'll wait till you cool off. Well, that was 6 months ago. I still haven't cooled off. He's a fucking idiot. And I told my lead singer, I told my lead singer, because initially my lead singer was very happy. He says, oh, that'll be good for, for advertising. Oh, the original drummer from Wicked Lester, people get, interested in that. But he blew it for himself. So now whatever he's doing on his own. Matter of fact, I contacted some of my friends, and I said, if you friended him and you're listening to his bullshit, I said, please don't buy his bullshit, because he's just making up shit. There is no tour. I've never even met the guy. I talked to him on the phone 3 times,
Because when it first came out, I'm saying, how can it work when Gene and Paul are tied up with Kiss? But unless they might be doing something, they might get some other band members to do it. But I'm just saying, it doesn't make sense. Who's running this thing behind the scenes, and who's trying to get it all together? And I'm saying, let's hear it from Steve himself, because he obviously knows more than what I do, and now we've got the story. Carl Linnaeus, by any chance? He's from Sweden. He's the writer for Sweden Rock magazine. Yes. We've got him on our Facebook page. Yeah, he's a good guy. He did an interview with me, and it came out in the Sweden Rock magazine issue. He sent it to me from Sweden, where it's my interview page is right in the center of Gene's interview. that cover with Gene's on the cover, from a couple months ago. So we get along great. We did a phone interview like you and I are doing from Sweden. So he called me up a month or 2 ago and wants to know, Steve, what's the scoop on the Wicked Lester thing? Another guy calls me up. He says, what's the scoop on the Wicked? He says, should I post it in my new happenings column in the magazine? I said, no. I said, don't post it. There is no reunion. There's nothing. It's like I told you. I said, Tony's walking around shooting his mouth off to everybody, telling them lies. He's just lying to people. I saw some woman on his page. I looked on his page. I saw some woman on his page. She says, oh, will you guys be playing in Sweden too? And Tony goes, yeah, we're playing there too. What the fuck is wrong with him? Well, that's the thing that I like to say is that fans will buy into anything. If it looks well and it looks good, they'll buy into it. Well, because he's Tony Zarello from Wicked Lester. They trust him. But the thing is, he broke their trust, and he didn't listen to me. Look, I'm a multi-platinum songwriter from Kiss. Tony is a fucking drummer. He can't sing. He hasn't written anything. He's a fucking drummer, okay? Which is nothing against him. But don't start telling me that you're going to do this and you're going to do that. You could talk to me about it and say, Steve, do you think it would be a good idea maybe if I tried speaking to Gene? Or, Steve, could we do this and that like a partner? I was nicer to him than he was to me, you understand? You start telling me, it ain't ever going to happen for you that way, buddy. Yeah. But what I want to ask you, Steve, would you like to see something like, you're obviously putting some stuff together as we speak, and you're also trying to plan to come to Australia. Will we see some Wicked Lester stuff down in Australia? Will you personally play some stuff?
Yeah, I would pick a couple of the songs that I think were doable, that we could do a good job on. The big issue we have is this, and again, this isn't something that you should start spreading rumors about like Tony does. I'm just telling you nicely in advance before I say it to you. the reason the Wicked Lester thing, isn't anywhere near done is because, look, Jamie, you need a product first. First of all, the Wicked Lester name is not owned by me. If it's owned by anybody, it's owned by Gene and Stan, okay? Exactly. So if I'm going to approach them and say, hey, I want to put together a band called Wicked Lester, Gene's going to look at me and goes, wait, what are you going to do? What's it going to sound like? Who is in it? Do you have a bio? Do you have a professional promo package? Are you ready to go, or are you just talking out your ass? So I am not talking to Gene. I'm not talking to Gene about any Wicked Lester proprietary rights to the name, unless there's a band that's prepared to, kick ass and say, hey, look at this, you'll be proud of it, So that's why it's not happening. Until there's a band, there's no point, you can't go to Gene or anybody who owns something and say, oh, can I use it? I'll do a good job. Oh, really? Let me hear it. Let me see it, Now, I'm sure I would ask the same thing if I owned the Wicked Lester name. You came to me and said, hey, Steve, can I have your name, Wicked Lester? I say, what?
Yeah, exactly. Because what you just said there, I was approached by a couple of fans when I was on the KISS radio show, and I just finished my recording, and like I said, 18 months ago, and I wasn't doing any more radio station and radio shows, and I was just having a bit of a break from everything, and the story came out about the Wicked Lester, and I was approached by some fans and said, Jamie, what is your opinion on this? I said, all right, let me tell you one thing. It will never happen. I said, oh, you don't like Wicked Lester. I said, it's got nothing to do whether I like Wicked Lester or I like Wicked Lester. The major thing being is, it's Gene and Paul ownership now. They've taken their ownership now. I said, if Steve and the other members of the band, according to what I know for being in a band, if they wanted to do something type of Wicked Lester, one, they probably won't be able to use a name, and two, they'll probably have to come up with another name, but what are they going to call themselves? And what are they going to be playing like? And what are they going to sound like? And what are they going to be dressed like? And blah, blah, blah. I said, not only that, I think Steve doesn't really want to do it, Paul doesn't really want to do it, and Gene doesn't really want to do it. If there's no communication between those three people together, well, it's never going to happen. They said, oh, anything possible, Jamie? Never. I said, listen, it won't happen. Steve can come out on his own if he wants to. Gene and Paul are too busy with KISS. They're making a record now called Monster, and Monster's already come out. I said, the guy who is the drummer of Wicked Lester, I don't know what he's trying to do, but it doesn't sound too good on my end for what I'm being told by other people, like the guy from Sweden, KISS magazine, and all that. And I was saying, it's just ludicrous. They're all making out, oh, come to this country. And it's like when KISS have already been in our country, oh, can you come back to Australia again? I said, they only been here like 3 weeks ago. You can't fucking get them here every 3 weeks. And,
that's right.
And the thing is, the question I want to put towards you, and I've seen a lot of dirt being thrown, not at you, but, well, you can say yes at you and yes at Wicked Lester. What did you got to say about those that say that the Wicked Lester, who gives a fuck about Wicked Lester? I'm not saying it. I'm just passing on what I've read and what I've seen on Facebook and on other KISS forums. What do you got to say to those haters out there?
Oh, well, that's a two-part answer. Maybe it's a three-part answer. First thing is I'd like to see them say it to me, my face in person. I work out with weights. I'm an older guy, but guess what? You're going to be wishing you didn't say it to me. Number two, they're right. Who really wants to see a band that never made it? The worst haters out there said that, in a way, it's the truth. These are guys, including myself, that never made it big like KISS did. We were, rejects from the band. We didn't become big rock stars. So you could say, well, who's interested in seeing that? There are a lot of people, though, which is part three of the answer, a lot of people, though, who like that music, and they like the people, such as myself, that were involved in it. They want to see us do something, and they'd like to maybe us to be that success that we never, did back in the day. So, But my main answer to your question, Jamie, is that people have to say things like that on the air or printed. There's something wrong with them. What are you so angry about? You know?
Exactly. I mean, here's the thing I want to tell you, Steve. I don't agree with everything that Kiss does, but as soon as I voice my opinion why I don't like that, I'm not a Kiss fan anymore. And it's right across the board. It's not just me. It could be David if he hasn't said it personally to himself, but if he doesn't like something, right, he's no longer a Kiss fan.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. I found by talking with the people on Facebook, and I've talked to a couple of thousand people by now. Everybody is polite. They're nice. They're kind. They're friendly. They're nothing but helpful. They're decent people. You know, all these Kiss fans, every one of them. But out of that 1,000 or 2 people, you got 5 guys who just have aberrant. They display what I like to call aberrant behavior. They got to do something that's just awkward and. You know, like there was one guy who runs one of the KISS groups, I forget the name of it, early on when I was, being brought into these groups. He said, oh, would you join our group? I said, oh, okay. So I come in the room, so to speak. Oh, Steve Cornell's here, and, they're all talking nice to me. Oh, it's a pleasure, thank you, it's an honor, all nice things, Then there's the one guy who's the leader of the group. He doesn't even talk to me. He's yelling at somebody else in the group. I see he's typing stuff. Next day he comes on my page, and I posted a picture of one of my big exhibit designs that I did. Yeah. And everybody else is polite. They don't exactly know what it is, but they don't, they say, oh, that's beautiful, that's really nice. Gee, I love the way the colors, the design is beautiful, magnificent, all nice, friendly stuff. This guy comes on, he says, with an exclamation point, like he's yelling, he says, what is that? That's how you talk to somebody when you've never even spoken to me? You say, hi, Steve, nice to meet you. I'm so-and-so, the one who runs the KISS group. What is that? What's wrong with you? So I took him aside, so to speak, on the messages. I said, listen, when you talk to me, you talk politely. You say, hi, Steve. Just like I told you, I instructed him on how a human being is supposed to greet another human being. I'm not being a prick. It's the way you're supposed to deal with people.
Yeah. And the thing is, when you put that other photo up on your Facebook page, it looks like a spaceship type of tripod type of thing. And I'm saying there's a spider. That they took something from you. Whether I'm not sugarcoating it, whether they've taken your vision and made a concert design out of it, and like I said before in this interview. With that costume design, and when you were drawing up some designs, then a decade later, that was magnified 10 times fold. That's the same with that other photo that was on your Facebook page of that spaceship, like Doctor Who. I remember watching a 1980 show here in Australia called Tripod. I had all these different, like Doctor Who type of Time Lords walking around in the forest. That's exactly what it looked like to me. And then come to this tour of KISS, they have the spider lightning rig.
It's funny. It's funny. I think it's coincidence, but it's funny because back in the, I guess in the late 90s or something, when I did that drawing, I forget when I did it, or 2000, I sent some of those drawings to Gene because I said, he said, what are you doing now? I said, oh, I'll send you some of my exhibit designs. And I emailed him. I probably emailed him that spider, but look, everybody thinks of a big spider. I'm not the only person in the world who's capable of thinking of a big spider,
I just thought it was something out of, like, my partner and I are Doctor Who fans. We thought it was something out of Doctor Who, like another TARDIS or something.
Well, I looked at the idea from an exhibit designer point of view. You want to do something. Look, when you go to a museum and you see big dinosaur bones and you're a kid, you're scared. The whole excitement of looking at an exhibit, it's supposed to look big and intimidating. So I said, what would look better than a big spider looming over me, about 30 foot in diameter, about 20 foot high, with these big arms, and it'd be easy to make. So I modeled the whole thing, and I made the whole thing in Form Z in my CAD modeling program. I said, we could build this. I've engineered the inside, it has a projector in it, and I said, this can work. So that's why I did that. But Gene's version, Kiss's version, obviously it's all those trusses. A lot of the shape, the top thing that they did, it really wasn't, all that exciting. I mean, it's functional, but I think it could have been done a little bit better. But, it's probably easier the way they did it. It's easier to ship and it's easier to put together.
Yeah. Well, Steve, this has been an absolutely blast. It's been almost an hour and 40 minutes of a great interview here. There's a lot of history, a lot of informative stuff that both David and I are well through. Is there anything more you'd like to say to the fans down under or anybody who is from overseas that like our page?
I'll tell you all out there, remember us. Remember rock and roll. Remember classic rock history. It's one of the best things that ever happened on this planet.
Yeah, because like I said at the start, David, you just missed out on a great, great interview, but we are going to get Steve back on again, and I hope Steve can come back on again because David would love to hear these stories in person himself, I reckon. And anytime. You contact me, leave me a note on Facebook, or I'll give you my email later too, so I'll be sure to not miss you this time. Or you can text my phone, I guess, too, right? Yeah, well, not from Australia, but we can definitely call it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want you guys to keep incurring expenses, for making phone calls to me. But if you want to, sure, you're certainly welcome. And anytime I see a strange number from California now that I don't recognize, I'll know it's you.
We work it out. We pay the bill. Dave and I pay half of our stuff, but I'll let you think. But can we ask you a question? Actually a favour, Steve. It might be a bit much. Can you do us a video of original outtake for She and post it up on the Facebook podcast page if you can? Just no singing or anything, just the original arrangement. I would love to see that. If you can do that, of course.
Well, what do you mean? How would I create it? In what format? Are you talking about a video of me playing it or something?
Yeah, well, even audio. I mean, if you want to share it with us on the podcast.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I got you now. I understand. All right. Well, I have to work on that. I'll put that on my to-do list.
Yeah, and also we'll pump this out to all the fans out there as well. It's going to all around the world via YouTube, and also it's going on Facebook, and it's also going on our Twitter account as well. They can follow us on Twitter, and also all the other podcast-related pages that we have got. Just go there, and we will send you some other great goods as well, Steve. We want to give you a thank you gift. We're going to give you a coffee mug, Steve, of our podcast.
Well, that's good. As long as it's big enough to hold my French brandy, I'll be happy.
You can also put Gene's tongue in it. You can also fit his tongue in it. It's that big. It's pretty cool. So we got a new segment on our show called Mug of the Week. What that means is that any hilarious stuff or outrageous stuff or any Kiss news that's out there in the world, we're going to have a segment called Mug of the Week, but we're giving you one out of our own generosity, and just to say thank you for being on our show. We'll get that all organised. It'll take 10 days to get make, and then it'll take 10 days to send over. So you're looking around 20 days all up. So you'll get
all right,
that.
That's great. Thank you.
And by all means, take a photo with it as well.
I will.
You know. All right, Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure. You've probably got things to do. You've got to try out that new guitar that you got from Australia now too, so it's all good.
That's right. As soon as I get off the phone with you, I'm running downstairs with a pair of scissors. I'm cutting open the box, and I'm going to look at that.
Well, give us a bit of a video as well, or a photo as well. But
all right.
You can. Do what you can.
All right, Jamie.
Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure, and give our thanks to all the family and over there from us.
I will.
And rock on, brother. Rock on.
Well, Jamie, it's the same over here. It's been great talking to you. I think that you're a real person. You have real passion for music, and you make a lot of sense. The things you say to me, I agree with everything you said. It's very nice talking to you as a person as well as an interviewer.
Thank you very, very much, Steve. And like I said, we'll have you on any time as long as you're free, and I'm free, and David's free. Well, hopefully Dave will be free next time. we'll have a bit more of a history lesson. We could go in more depth of what we spoke about.
All right, that sounds like a good deal to me.
Yeah. All right, Dave, take it easy.
All right, Jamie, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, Dave, there it is.
Yeah. Oh.
An hour and 40
Yeah, it was.
minutes of me talking to the great Steve Cornell. Now, please, go onto his Facebook page, let him know that you like this interview, give him praise, and that he will love you guys just give him a comment. Please be polite. He did say this in the interview. Don't be rude. You know, be polite when you approach him on Facebook, and yeah, just let him know that you love this podcast and that you like this interview, and the more the merrier. And all credit goes back to the fans, and also we want to thank Steve Cornell for joining us early this morning.
Thanks, Steve. It was really great that you.
But Dave, I just want to ask you a question. What do you actually think? What actually surprised you in this interview?
His honesty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically.
What really surprised me? Yeah. Well, what really surprised me? He never let back. He told it how it was, and I did too. I said some stuff about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that I am very, very passionate about rock in general, and over the years, I believe the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has taken the word rock and threw the rock out the window. And
did you tell?
Yeah.
You tell him that they're trying to get the Rock Hall of Fame up here?
Well, I hope so. I didn't say that.
Yeah.
But I hope so. But what I say is, look out for Steve Cornell on Facebook. He will be doing some other things coming around. He will organise something. There's a little thing that said it did say that something may be happening for Australia. So keep your eye out on that. I did say that give Dave and I a backstage pass, and we laughed. I said no, don't. But you never know. Things can happen. I'm not here to gain any publicity or gain any thing out there. If we get it, we get it. But if it happens, it happens. If it's not, it's not. But
fair. We'll still go see him play.
Yeah,
definitely.
For all means, this was a smash hit for us. We smashed it. And next time Gene can sack me from the podcast for a week or something. But no. But no, I'm very passionate. I'm very very open mind. Well, I have a mind and I speak my mind. Whether it gets me into trouble or not, I pay the consequences. But like I said before, what I say is not the law. It's not the end all say. I don't have to like everything about Kiss. And when I do opinionate why I don't like it, that does not make me a Kiss fan. I am a Kiss fan. Always have been, and I probably always will be. But just take it. You don't have to like everything that Kiss does. And that's the way it is. If you want to, I applaud you. But remember, don't put everything in a box. Look outside the square. That's all I've got to say. That's all I've got to say.
Yeah.
But
go
to our podcast Facebook page, Krazy Knights. You'll see us. We have got Dave and I wearing a different band T-shirt. We're not wearing a Kiss T-shirt. One of the Kiss gonna.
No, the T-shirt that we're wearing is from a band called the Screaming Jets. Australians would know, the Screaming Jets supported Kiss on the farewell tour of Australia. Did all cities and all that. So one of Australia's greatest rock bands ever. To support, get the Kiss support was awesome. It was an awesome show, having them on there as well, and supporting the greatest band on the planet. Yeah, so that's why we're wearing those T-shirts in the photo.
Yeah, and that's the photo. Go to our YouTube channel. I know we're not getting many comments, but hey, if we don't, who cares? We're like the TNA in the wrestling business. We're the small independent thing. We're not paying anything. We're not even paying to promote ourselves. We don't need to pay for our promotion. We get one fan at a time, and that was their goal. So, we're not here to make records. We're here just to do what we do. It's a hobby, and it's an interest. But also, I do want to say this. I did post up early in the week a suggestion from the fans who they want us to get on our show. And there's a whole range of people that we've got homework to do, Dave, to track down and whatnot.
Yep.
And we are going to do that. And I've got to say, I'm flattered by the responses that we've got. And I will say this.
There's some very good suggestions there too.
Yep.
Some I'd love to get a hold of myself, actually.
And I will say this. Mid-December, I have lined up one of those guests that was suggested on the page. I'm not going to give the name out. The person had got back to me, and it's going to be around mid-December. But also,
Jamie whispering this here. Who is it? Oh, okay. Fair enough.
You farted.
No, I didn't. No.
I can hear wind going between your ears. You're blowing out the other side. So that's all right. You
tell me off air.
Oh, okay.
I think you've told me, but I've forgotten.
Yeah. But anyway, keep those suggestions coming. We will track them down, and we're trying to do some research to see if we can get those people on our show. But remember, not every week going to be a guest on our show. Also, I do want to say this. I did get a comment on YouTube that we should get Robert V. Conte back on our show. Now, we are going to get Robert V. Conte on. It's going to be before the Christmas season. We are going to talk about the album he done. You're one of the best. You got the best. And we didn't really touch on that the last time we spoke to him, but we are going to get him back on to talk about that album. And we're looking forward to Robert V. I will send out another message out to him, and we'll arrange it, and we'll set a date and that. Also, Loretta Carr got back to us, David, and she's also said that she'll love to come back on the show very shortly.
Sweet. Yeah, no, she's a sweet woman, Loretta. So, I'm glad. So, yeah.
And if you want to know why my eyes are like hanging out of my head, I do go to the work at night time while David just floats around in the background, just comments now and again. But
I'll probably start commenting a bit more, soon anyway. But Jamie does a lot of work at night, because I've got to get up early in the morning for work and all that.
Too,
so that's why a lot of time I do comment and at times, but Jamie does much of his work at night. As I said, so he does some of his best work at night.
Yeah, but see, I'm the one that copping the most crap for what I say when I'm being opinionated. But hey, I love it. I love it. You know?
Yeah.
I love it. But hey, I'm not bashing anyone. I do respect their opinions, and I just hope they respect mine. You can agree to disagree. That's all I got to say. It's not the law. Yes, David's joining his head off because he got up early and then he had to go back to bed and go back to work, and I went back to bed.
Make him more cash.
Yeah, and unfortunately I only had
I am learning from Gene.
Nah, well, yeah.
Yeah.
You're paying to kiss merchandise for Gene. No, we're not doing that. We're doing some other stuff for the podcast and also to pay the bills and whatnot that we've got to do like everyone else. Then, yeah. But anyway, go on our podcast page, go on our YouTube page, go on our Podbean, Breaker, Stitcher, Itchy and Scratchy. We don't have that yet, but we might. But yeah, go to all our pages. Go our Twitter page as well, and you never know. You just never know what's around the corner at the night's table. We might have something that you'll really surprise. So, homework. Well, I shouldn't say homework. I should say suggestions. Go and give Steve Cornell your praises. Give him thanks you. Give him some gratitude, and be polite to him. He does mention that. Just be polite. And that's all he's asking for. So do that. On behalf of Krazy Knights, we say to Steve, thank you, and to the friends, we'll see you next week. Rock on.
They try to tell us we don't